Hey, what's up guys? Hardleg Joe here with a What a Deck profile for the Christmas Gift Deck 2017. And before I even go over everything, first of all, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, Merry Halamas, Happy Christmas Hana Kwanzaa Don. Good Festivus, can't forget about that. And then I also want to mention, if you're new to the channel, if you don't know about this deck is not good. It is not meant to win. It's kind of like a reverse troll deck. It mostly trolls myself. The entire idea is just to basically stall and give your opponent a bunch of resources and give them a bunch of cards. And if they're greedy, they will deck themselves out by drawing too much. And if not, they'll probably beat you. But especially if you play it online, most people have fun with this deck. So if you just want to be goofy, if you just want to basically give your opponent a win while still doing something and having a fun time, this is the deck for you. I'll just go ahead over everything in here. For monsters, we're playing 3 Santa Claus, of course, 3 Silent Wobby, 3 Swift Scarecrow, and 3 Battle Fader or spells. 1 Day of Peace, 3 Pot of Desires, 3 Cup of Ace, Upstart Goblin, 3 Present Exchange, 3 Book of Eclipse, 3 Messenger of Peace. For traps, we got 3 The Gift of Greed, 3 Trickstar Reincarnation, 3 Side Effects, 3 Present Card, 3 Grand Horn of Heaven, 3 Dark Bribe, and 3 Recall. The extra deck has 1 Crazy Box, 1 Doulahan, 1 Slacker Magician, 3 Shamoji Soldier, 1 Recite Starling, 1 Assembly Nightingale, 1 Decode Talker, 1 Akashic Magician, 2 Linklebell, and 3 Link Karibo. The side deck I'll go over in a moment. So as I said, this deck doesn't really have like a win condition. It's just about having your opponent draw as many cards as possible and stalling, and maybe they'll deck out, maybe they'll lose out of frustration, but it's very rare. I'll just go everything in the order that we've got it here. So Santa Claus, you can special summon this card from your hand to your opponent's side of the field in defense position by attributing 1 monster they control. And if it's summoned this way during the end phase, you draw 1 card. And the U in this case refers to your opponent, the person who controls the card, which is kind of nice theming. I like how Santa basically shows up unexpected on your opponent's field and then gives them the gift of a card. Silent Wobby's similar, except for you don't tribute a monster. It's just during the main phase you can special summon this card from your hand to your opponent's side of the field. When summoned this way, draw 1 card, and if you do, your opponent gains 2,000 life points. Again, that's reversed because your opponent's going to be getting it, so your opponent will draw a card, and you'll be getting 2,000 life points. You can only use this effect once per turn, and the hand size limit of this card's controller becomes 3. So before Link summons, this was a little bit more viable. As it stands, this is pretty much give your opponent a free Link material. The only thing that's decent about it is you combine this with something like Messenger of Peace. Monsters with 1,500 or more attack cannot declare an attack. You could set this, it has 2,000 defense, so between these two, you might be able to stall if you just use this on your own instead of summoning it. Most of the time, you're just giving your opponent more resources. We're playing the Swift Scarecrow and the Battle Fader. These are both when your opponent's monster declares an attack, you can negate the attack and end the battle phase. This does it by discarding, this does it by summoning. They're not really all that Christmas themed. I just found that if I didn't have something to stall a little bit, I would usually die in the first turn and it wouldn't really matter. Again, if you wanted to make this maybe a little bit more serious, you could always add in something like Threatening War or Wabaku. But I already had enough spell traps, so I wanted to put a couple monsters in there. 1 Day of Peace, each player draws a card, neither player takes damage, so this is stall and draw power. Pot of Desires, obviously it's just draw power. This deck just basically sets everything and uses it in the first turn, so this is a good way to get draw power. Mostly, though, I use it with Present Exchange. It's each player banishes 1 card from their deck face down. During the end phase of this turn, each player adds the card their opponent banished to their hand. So you use Present Exchange to give your opponent Pot of Desires. And then again, going with that theme of like, if they're greedy, if they use the Pot of Desires, they're removing 12 cards from their deck, making it even easier to mill them out. And if they don't use it, well, at least you got a card out of their deck, so it at least mills 1. If you were going to play this seriously, this is probably the first thing you would remove is these two, or at least just Present Exchange. Cup of Ace, flip a coin. If heads, you draw 2 cards. If tails, your opponent draws 2 cards. It's a win-win in this case. Either you get more resources or your opponent goes through the deck faster. Upstart Goblin, I just had 49 cards, so I made it 50. Plus, it still works with the theme because you're giving your opponent life points and you're getting a card. Book of Eclipse, the Holy Book. Change all face-up monsters on the field to face-down defense position. Then during the end phase of this turn, flip as many face-down monsters your opponent controls into face-up, and your opponent draws cards equal to the number of monsters flipped face-up by this effect. Not only will this stall you a turn because it can prevent attacks by flipping all their cards face-down, but when they flip face-up, then they're drawing a bunch, so again, just going through their deck faster. Messenger of Peace, monsters with 1500 or more can't declare an attack. I think I already said that. This is the newest addition to this. This was originally Raw Sphere mode, which actually can work pretty nice with this deck, especially with things like Silent Wabi allowing you to give your opponent monsters. Unfortunately, it's still not working on YGOPro. I don't know why. I thought they had fixed it, but apparently not. But either way, if you want to play this more seriously, maybe take out this or take out the Cup of Ace, put Raw Sphere mode in there because that can get rid of a whole bunch of your opponent's resources, and then it also comes back to your side of the field after a turn. If they don't use it as link material, then you've got a card that can't be targeted by attacks or card effects, which can be a pretty decent wall. Next up, we just got the Gift of Greed. Your opponent draws 2 cards, usually terrible, but it actually works in combination with Trickstar Reincarnation and Present Card. These are both very similar. Present Card, your opponent discards their entire hand and draws 5 cards. Trickstar Reincarnation, you banish your opponent's entire hand, and if you do, they draw the same number of cards they had. Obviously, the more cards your opponent has in their hand, the better this works. So it's nice if you start out, you activate this, you activate some of your other draw cards like side effects, you give them a Wabi, and then at the start of this turn, if they have like 9 cards in their hand, they're either banishing all 9 of them and then drawing 9 more, which will put them through their deck and get rid of their resources, or they're sending them to the graveyard where they might be useful, but then they're only drawing 4 cards, so they're actually losing a lot of those cards that you gave them. They're going back to 5. Side effects is just another draw card. Your opponent draws 1 to 3 cards, and then you gain 2,000 life points for each card they draw. This is another, like, the greedier they are, the more cards they get, the more life points you get, and the faster they go through their deck. And then finally we've just got the draw negation. We've got 3 counter traps, Grand Horn of Heaven, Dark Bribe, and Recall, which are all sort of variations on the same thing. This is when your opponent activates a monster effect, negate the activation, destroy the card, your opponent draws a card. Same thing with spell traps, negate the spell trap, destroy it, and your opponent draws a card. And this is during your opponent's main phase. If they would special summon a monster, negate the summon, destroy the monster, your opponent draws 1 card, and then it ends the main phase. So this is even better because, again, if they start like a big play and you get rid of that, their monster, then it just goes straight to the battle phase or main phase 2, so they can't attack you for that turn, or at least they can't attack you as much as they would like. The extra deck I never go into, really. I think I made Link Kuriboh once or twice with Battle Fader, but really most of this is just for show. I play a couple level 1s. Really just run whatever you feel like. If you want to make this more serious, you can put in like Decode and Akashic Magician, but for the most part, you're not going to be going into this. Then the side deck is just some other options. I already mentioned Raw Sphere mode. I used to play Chainsaw Insect, which is a 2400 attack, level 4 monster, but if it attacks or was attacked, your opponent draws 1 card. I was trying to go for a more like peaceful, pacifist kind of deck with this. I didn't want to attack at all, so I got rid of this. Likewise, I was going to use Muscle Medic. This is 2200 attack, level 4, and any player that would take damage from a battle involving this card gains that much life points instead. So again, it's sort of like a high attack wall that you can use either to defend or to attack your opponent, but it's not hurting them. They gain the life points anytime you would deal it, which doesn't really help your win condition, but it sort of fits with the theme. Likewise, I used to play Destiny Hero Defender, the good old Christmas rock. During each of your opponent's standby phase, your opponent draws 1 card. This must be in face-up defense position to activate and resolve this effect. So this used to be with 2700 defense, a pretty great defense wall. You'd set it, it gets flipped up, and then your opponent draws extra cards every turn. The problem is, I started out with this, and everyone always destroyed it before attacking into it. People don't trust face-down monsters. The very few monsters that get played face-down these days are usually flip effects or cards that get effects in the graveyard. So people would go through a lot of trouble not to attack into this because they knew it was something they didn't want to. So it's been a little bit power creep. That's why I went with more of the Swift Scarecrow and the Battle Faders. But again, if you're playing a slower format, you're playing something in casuals, this could work in. And then finally, Fiendish Fortune. This is another one I played last year. It doesn't work as well this time. It's once per turn during your standby phase. Your opponent declares a card type, monster, spell, or trap. You excavate the top card of your deck. If it is that type of card, your opponent draws 1 card. Otherwise, discard 1 card from their hand, and then place the excavated card on the bottom of your deck. This is just a nice, like, guessing game kind of card. And again, either turn, they're either discarding a card or drawing a card, so you're either getting rid of their resources, or you're giving them more resources by lowering their deck count, so it works out. So there you go, not really a competitive deck in the slightest, not even a viable troll deck really, just sort of the silly thing that I do every year, and people seem to enjoy it, so hopefully you enjoy it. Next week I'll be back to business as usual. It'll be the last What a Deck of the year, which is a Patreon request for Spiritual Beasts, or Ritual Beasts, whatever you want to call them. Either way, it's probably going to be difficult. I'm gonna try my best, and hopefully I don't embarrass myself too much. So until then, good luck, have fun, and Merry Christmas. Hey, Feliz Navidad, Feliz Navidad, Feliz Navidad, Prospero año y felicidad.